We will return to open session at 5:59. The board did take action in closed session, so I'll read out the following reporting out statement. In closed session, the board took action to terminate the employment of a permanent attendance secretary. The vote was as follows: Trustee Pickle, aye. Trustee Ham, aye. Trustee Jayasinga, aye. Trustee Lopez, aye. And Trustee Valadez, aye. Is there a motion to approve student disciplinary cases 61, 83, and 85 as recommended?
So moved.
I second that.
Okay. And a motion is second, so we'll go ahead and call for the vote, please.
I'm an aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Invite everyone to stand for the flag salute. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Call for the vote then, please.
I'm an aye, Mrs. Lebec.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
I think so.
Would
Yes.
you like us to make the screen a little bigger?
Sure, that'd be great, thank you. You recognize my squinting, thank you. Yeah, these are for up close and, yeah, thank
Is
you.
that better?
That's great, thank you. Appreciate that. I don't want to admit it, but I appreciate it. Next we have principals report.
I'm sorry, that shouldn't.
Should be there?
on the
Okay,
agenda.
all right. Do we have any public comments? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to reports and discussions. First one is 2022-23 LCAP presentation.
No microphone.
Microphones are.
The
here on
microphone
table.
is right there, even better,
You have to talk out.
better.
Using your coaching voice.
I'll
Sounds
use
good.
the coaching voice. Very good. Thank you. Well, good evening, President Pickle. Before I start with our LCAP executive summary, I want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through this year. And I want to say a big thank you to everyone that participated, starting with CSEA and B. McCutcheon. The feedback that we got, the process that we went through with CSEA was truly honest and good, valuable. And I want to thank B for teaching me the word crunchy along the way. And it's a good process that we have in place, and B was a good reminder of getting back to some of the things that has made our relationship successful. Secondly, with DTA, same thing with President Puss, very clear line of communication. We don't always have to agree or don't always agree, but there's always a very clear line of communication with DTA. Big thank you to our DLAC and our parents with Tina Austin, Dr. Austin. Again, another really good platform to get feedback from our DLAC parents. With our District Advisory Committee, a big thank you to Ms. Bennett and Mr. Bennett with the Merced Black Parallel School Board. and all of the community members from the LGBTQ+ Success Network coming out of MCOE, with John Magnuson and Dr. Rob Morrow, who has been very instrumental in helping us work through some concerns and being able to address them through the LCAP this year. And with that, I'll circle back to the highlights that you have here in the executive summary. Again, a big reminder, it's a big challenge to work with 3 different communities within our district. It's a very large area that we cover. And every community is very different, and every community has specific needs. And it's through the very honest conversations that we have that we're able to get better and be inclusive and ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students. You'll see within the LCAP highlights tonight that those are also 4 board goals, which you will hear me talk about later this evening. So we have used the board goals, the superintendent goals, as also part of our local control accountability plan. Lastly, I'll hand it over to Jeanette McCauley. A big thank you to Jeanette McCauley and our business department for helping us through this LCAP. And I know some of you that work with the LCAP specifically know how fluid it is and all the changes that we've had to have over the last 2 or 3 years. I almost want to say that it's a great exercise for any upcoming and aspiring associate principal that wants to become a principal to go through the LCAP process and to actually write it, as has Jeanette McCauley. So again, a big thank you to Jeanette and all the work that she's done with it. And I'll hand it over to Jeanette, and she'll be going through all of the different goals and the highlights and the additions to this year's LCAP.
Good evening, President Nichols and board members, and thank you, Dr. Aguilar. I don't know if there's any innuendos in there about my position next year, but it's really always fun.
Build it in.
I don't know, it's always fun. Okay, anyways, thank you. As we proceed with the Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP, so I'm going to say that a lot. Again, our goal is to move towards increasing student achievement and utilizing services and programs throughout to help our students be successful throughout their 4 years. Today is a public hearing and discussion, and as we report out, next week after we decide if there's anything to be modified, we'll have a special board meeting for approval of the LCAP. From there, it gets to MCOE, and they go through their revisions, if there is any, and then, again, some possibly follow up in August with you guys as we move forward. Again, the LCAP is continuing, which we'll get to in a bit. But a part of today's is not only the LCAP, you get the budget overview for parents, you get the local performance indicator self-reflection, and the federal addendum. So we're just going to briefly discuss, because that's all we have to do is kind of highlight on those. And let me move forward as we move. So again, we're in a 3-year process with the LCAP. We're on the first year of that annual update. And so we were looking at what we wrote last year, and as we held our educational partner meetings throughout this March, April, and May, we took that feedback to move forward with the actions, goals, metrics. And most of it in the end will be very similar as we move through. And again, we'll do this for the next 2 years throughout this whole LCAP that we wrote. COVID has modified a lot in the process, and so that's why there is the supplemental that I did not bring up on the first page. That is also included in this year's LCAP, and that's what I talked to you guys in February about. That has to be included, and that was because of all the extra COVID funding that we got through state and federal, and how we were aligning that with our current spending with the LCAP. So that's all included in the 95 pages that I'm going to talk about now. If I can figure out the clicker. So there's our 95 pages that I'm not going to click on. And if you guys need, you do have those attachments, and I hope you all read it over the weekend because you had nothing else to do. Again, any grammatical errors, please let me know. So the first is our budget overview for parents. And that's kind of breaking down our numbers. And so last year's pot, so again, I keep learning, I shouldn't say we, so I forget. But as I learned, we get an intern when Dr. Weiber comes up and tells you guys how much money we have.
Or don't have.
Huh?
Or don't have.
I'll get there, I'm getting there. I'm talking about last year with all the COVID money, why the numbers go up. So we get an interim where we plan. So right now, for the 22-23, we got our main numbers last week, and that's where I budgeted. However, last year in 21-22, we got the same numbers, and then we had our first interim December, I guess, and then that's where we went from 27 million to the 32 million. And in February, that's when I kind of discussed how we went up with a 15% concentration. And then this year at this time is 34 million for the 22-23. So again, when we have our after October seabed, numbers change, and hopefully it stays. If not, we do a little modification in the LCAP during that time plan for the following year. So a lot there. Again, supplemental is something that we did this last year because of all the different COVID funding for state and federal. And I got to share that with you guys in February, but that's a part of it. The beginning part of the LCAP, 95 pages, is budget overview for parents. Then you have the LCAP the supplemental annual update that we did this last year, and that's next pages. And then we move into the true 22-23 LCAP. Most of it, again, will be the same because that's the goal as we move through a 3-year cycle. You keep what you can the same. And the narrative part that I wrote and modified was just anything that changed through the years. We also got to highlight creating successes, some challenges, how we want to move forward. We also took our suggestions from our educational partners. And so that was, we have some new actions. We modified some metrics. Our core goals are always the same, and that will stay continual until the state of California changes how we do the LCAP. The budget, of course, changed. And then again, the metrics, since it's our annual update, we have a year one. Again, for the last 2 years, we've had COVID. So data has not necessarily been collected by the state of California. A lot of it's local. And then again, our inconsistency of schooling has data, the data that we might see is truly how reliable is it. And so again, as we look through that, that's something to always consider. The action table breaks down the money and what we have when we break it down per goal, per action, and I'll kind of get a little more into that. Carryover we had the previous year. This year at this time, we don't have any carryover as we move into 22-23. All right, so here's our first goal, number 1. And so how the goals are broken down is, again, we have our college and career ready goal, where, we want to make sure all students are college and career ready. We're looking at, instructional strategies or 7-period day. And we have more actions than just these 3. However, you have it where you have it LEA-wide, which is our district-wide. You have site-wide, and then we also have our limited populations. And LCAP defines our limited populations as our low socioeconomic, our English learners, and our foster youth. And so, for example, the middle action here, we have it broken down district-wide, site-wide, and limited populations. However, for this presentation, I combined them, and the funds are also combined also. That top number is incorrect. That top number should be 3 million. That was our previous year. Yes, that top number should be 3 million. I apologize. On the executive summary, we fixed it, but did not fix it on this slide. But it's 3.9 million, and I'll explain why very shortly. So the last couple of years, we've put a lot of funding here because this is where we have our 7-period day funding, and so that's when we increased all teacher sections by 1 week by amount, where we hired more. And so as we transitioned, we actually have modified and moved our funding from action 1.1, sorry about that, which is 3.9 million, to goal number 4 in the recruit and retain. That is an error on this slide. But it is 3 million. So our goal 1 has changed. And so in the 95 pages of the LCAT, after now we have our annual update, I will reflect on how we did in goal 1, how we did in goal 1. And we talked about our successes, our challenges, and then how we also expended our money. and was there any major changes? And so after each goal, you'll see that. And so that's why I know this one should only be 3.9 million, because it made sure to, bring notice to the changes like the budgeting. School climate. This is where we have added some based on our educational partners and our feedback from our educational partners. Cafeteria is the same there on the top one. Compare our 21-22, we have actually bumped this up a lot, but this is due, in my opinion, as we went through our COVID time, modernizing our cafeterias to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students. And that goes with also transportation. That number has also increased compared to 21-22. And a lot of it is just making sure we keep up with what we need and equipment. The next action there with the full-time school nurses, health aides, community liaisons, more classified support. That is the same action. Our MTSS one was there for ensuring campus safe climate and environment, also equitable, which we'll get to more. We added a little more here because, again, one of our superintendent goals is a focus on MTSS, so the action just got a little thicker in the wording. The last two, just stays the same, and then our last one is one of our superintendent goals that was added. So, equitable access, again, modifications here, everything else, technologies, where we have our technology, our child development center, our ensuring equitable access. Technology infrastructure is basically all the same. Sorry that I'm looking over it with my wording. But we have added a couple new ones here, and that is based on our educational partner feedback. And then again, we're looking there as to develop a team to plan for student and school interactions to improve educational opportunities and outcomes. Also looking at providing access to public transportation for students from their school site to off-site community educational, behavioral, or emotional support.
What exactly does that mean? Develop a team to, what are the school interactions?
Would you like to answer that one, Mr. Thompson?
Is it an MTSS team?
No, this is one of our educational partners' feedback. This is our Parallel School Board recommendations. Number one,
Which says,
develop a team to plan for student and school interactions to improve educational opportunities and outcomes.
yeah, so the Restorative Parallel School Board wants a group of professionals from the school site and community members to sit down and discuss how we can help remove barriers for African American and English-speaking Hispanic students to academic success. You know, what strategies are out there that we can employ to help those populations be more successful.
If you guys want me to go more in depth, please ask. I can read you the whole 95 pages. No, everybody, I'm talking, I'm kind of going over stuff, and I don't know how familiar everybody is with the LCAP, because I have it almost memorized. So, I'd rather you guys stop me, because it gets to me, I'm like, oh, I know what that is, but you guys may not, so please let me know. Again, goal number 4, there's the correct big number, $13 million for our recruiting routine. And again, that is supporting our staff as we move forward. Again, when we break down some of these, I've merged them if they are district-wide, site-wide, and limited populations, so professional development on academic standards and curriculum framework. After me today, you'll have an update on the superintendent goals, and you'll hear a lot more information on everything I'm briefly talking about. Again, we'll talk about our professional development with counseling, with math, MTSS, and Dr. Aguilar as we move forward. Something we have from our SCA conversation, and we're talking about making sure our campus liaisons and our staff is prepared. So again, working with student support and working with the CPI training, that was added this year. Restorative justice practices, go for it, Dr. Aguilar.
Could you, share what CPI stands
Yes,
for?
I was trying to like stall, so that I had a chance to like open it up.
Crisis prevention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was stalling there to get to it, thank you. So, I probably had it at the bottom of my page when I was actually looking at it. Again, restorative justice practices and implementation, that was something when we worked with our, the Merced Black Parallel School Board, was, making sure to have an advocate. And so at this time, we're still continue having that conversation, but we know that our administrators, our staff need more updates on training and just the practices, and more than ever, we saw that this year, throughout the year at the different sites of handling safety situations. And so that's something that we have added, in our professional development for our student support team. And again, one added based on our educational partner feedback is to aggressively recruit, hire, and retain African Americans. And so when you put all these numbers together, besides my one error, that totals the $37 million that we started with in the budget overview for parents. So before I continue, do you guys want to ask questions on the LCAP now? If not, I have to present these other two things that are a part of today's meeting. So I'm going to keep going, and then at the end, you guys could ask away then. So another part of the LCAP presentation is to include our reflection on our local indicators. And so the state of California, a handful of years ago, when the LCAP and LCFF was created, I'll say they also went off the indicators. In the last couple of years, our state dashboard has not posted data due to COVID. However, we still want to make sure we talk about our local indicators that we do here. And in the middle, this past year, we did a mid-year on our metrics and shared that at the board meeting in February. Here's just a reflection on a few of them that's not already in the LCAP, and then they also are in the LCAP, but this is the chance that we have the reflection. If you actually get on California's dashboard, you'll see some reflection pieces there from the beginning of the year, because we did not have that much data for that. So starting off with our first reflection piece is making sure that we have appropriately assigned teachers, access to curriculum, and safe and clean functional school facilities. We have 99.87% of our teachers have English learner appropriate assigned. 96% of our teachers are fully credentialed. We have 122 teachers that teach out of their credentialed area. Please remember that could be one period most of the time, and then over half of those are the athletic or the band PE period. All students have access to their own copies of curricular material. Overall, our facilities were in good repair, but one site in the previous year. And so as we reflected on this metric, MUHFC has appropriately assigned teachers, aligned curriculum to the standards, and met the yearly fit tool.
What was the one facility?
Capitan, excuse me. And that was
Because of the brick? Or no?
I can't say that's why. I don't know. I talked to Lexi about it. That's what Mrs. Farley about it. You know, when we were talking about was it necessarily a newer custodian, and they're not how they completed the fit exactly. There wasn't anything that like stood out completely. So how the fit is, they go through the check marks of everything that is in good repair, and then they calculate that. And then if it gets to a certain percentage, you get the good repair. And when they had their calculation this year, everybody was in good repair. This is going off the 2021 data. They were the only ones without. I don't think it got that detailed. Correct me on that one, Dr. Weimer. I reviewed them all. That's why I was like, how can I explain that better? Our implementation of state academic standards. Again, I think as Dr. Aguilar presents next on the superintendent goals and what we've discussed the last several board meetings, where we're moving and where we know we need to move. We were moving before COVID, you know, curriculum, frameworks, instructional sound, meaning our essential standards, and then we really put the brakes on to figure out distance learning and then hybrid learning and where to move from there. And so I surveyed associate principals, instructional coaches, district staff, and we combined their opinions on this. They feel like we're more moving towards full implementation on overall in the district. And this is where we're, looking at our adopted academic standards and curriculum framework, and we're moving towards a different math one. We're going to be beginning looking at English and new transitions there. And so we know we continue to grow and continue to move forward as we do. And so I think that's why we're more in the initial and full implementation than necessarily completely over. Because again, it's always changing, and we're trying to make sure we're continually staying up to date and meeting the needs of our students. So again, this is a lot of more professional development and where we want to move as we align our standards to truly what we're doing in the classroom. Parent engagement. We hired the physician, Dr. Austin, that's correct. And she's helping, guide our family engagement. We went through the federal program modeling 2 years ago, and a lot of sites were not updating their family engagement plans. And since then, we've done a much better job in making sure that we're working with our school sites, our parents, to get feedback on those annually, and then also share those at our back-to-school night. We also use parent square as communication, but continually doing that every year. We want to also start doing it in the spring, so then we're ready to go in the fall with our next year's outline for the family engagement plans. Two-way communication kind of falls under this too, as we continue moving forward on making sure we're supporting our families throughout our district. We also did the California Healthy Kids Survey, and a lot of the California Healthy Kids Survey aligns to what the LCAP requires for our metrics. And so that's why it's important that we continue using that, because the questions that were required for the state to have in our LCAP also sit under the Healthy Kids Survey. But it's great to honestly look at that data to see not only how our staff, parents, but also our students are rating safety, connectedness to school. School climate. You'll see our metrics that during COVID, we had the lowest expulsion rate in the state of California. It was pretty equivalent too. Yes. So it's hard because our numbers are only going to go up the next couple of possible years compared to almost a 0% on that. And so again, as we move forward and evaluating state indicators, because that is the state indicator, I just wanted to put it up there, but we still want to continue with our local indicators. And as we move forward, again, this year with school safety, understanding school connectedness, and as Mr. Johnson spoke with us this afternoon, his passion as we move forward with MTSS, I think really ties into these two components for not only staff, again, parents, and our students. Those numbers getting higher. For COVID, we weren't as low. Again, we know it's our top priority as we move forward. And the last one, again, is broad course of study, which means all students have the chance to take classes throughout in our districts at their sites. We also, have our CT completion ranks, and all CT graduation requirements, graduation statuses, our A through G completion tracker. We've been talking about areas analytics, which is going to be hopefully helping us see more in depth students who might not be meeting our A through G, our CT, or graduation rates, and to support counselors as they move forward in their professional learning to get that data marked out. But we continue moving that way, and the 7th period day has really helped students have that opportunity to have more of an opportunity to take classes, also through the college. Do some yawns, so that means I talk faster when I see yawns. All right, last one's federal addendum. All this one really talks about is we get federal money, and how do we make sure we support that with our 4 goals? And look at that one. You should proofread these sometimes. So, Title I, Part A, or Title II, or Title III, or Title IV. But anyways, we get those federal funds every year, and then how do we align with our LCAP and make sure we continue moving forward? That's what the federal addendum is, and that's also what was attached to our board agenda. Exciting stuff. Now, I'm ready for questions, comments, and discussion.
Do we want to start maybe like with goal 1 and go through it, see sequentially, with any questions? I'm assuming there are questions, but no questions?
I just had one, let me find it real quick. It just had to do on the expenditures and carryovers. And just to clarify, because I think it said 0.52%, so we expended all dollars except for 0.52% that's carried over.
Previous year.
Correct. That, just wanted that clarified, because that's
Fingers crossed.
it's rare,
things-
so that's why I'm not bringing that up.
Very.
Okay, all right, that was it. That's it for me. Other than that, we're good. Okay.
Is there a way you could send us a breakdown of what we can see it side by side, what the plan was and now what the revision is?
Yeah.
That would be really
Well,
helpful.
Yes. I have it in like a Google sheet, and then I have it like highlighted what was added.
Okay.
And then I also had expenditures that was what we did in 21, what we had budgeted for 21, 22, what we expended in 21, 22, and then what we have projected for the next year. I have that in a Google sheet.
That'd be great. I know we see it as a budget, but as specifically the LCAP, it would be helpful. I'm also curious, I don't know, there's Aries, there's Parent Square, every site has their own app. I don't know, is there a way to merge all those together into one place? I mean, that's not the district, that's
No.
Aries provides one service, Parent Square provides another, but then we also have, I get the messages from the Bear, I don't even know what it's called.
Yeah, the Bear app.
Yeah, right?
Bear app.
And sometimes I get a lot of messages from one place and then not another, and then all of a sudden they start coming, and I'm just, as you're talking about Aries, it made me think, there's not maybe Aries is the place, and maybe that's where we need to be driving parents and students to get all of their information instead of to Parent Square. I've become real reliant on.
No, it's
Parent
okay.
Square.
I mean, I don't want to say anything we're moving that way for our registration forms and data forms, and so instead of having parents go to a different source, we're pulling that all this next year through Aries, like you said, so we don't have as many different sources to combine.
Awesome.
I don't know if Cheryl or maybe I want to add anything to that comment about how we have a lot of sources for parents, and sometimes it's confusing with multiple sources, and if anything, as we move forward, I'll take note of that.
Do we have an app, like a district branded app? I know, there are some, can't think of the word, sorry, vendors out there that provide that, and some of them tie into the website where you have, a school app, and within that, you get your Parent Square, you get your area. So parents, even though the information is coming from different places, or parents need to go different places, because they serve different purposes. Aries serves a purpose with attendance and grade book. Parent Square serves a purpose with different alerts, but the parent would go to one place, which makes it easier for the parent or the guardian or family member to get those messages, still respond to attendance, check grades, check messages. Do we have that, or
We do not
maybe
have
looking at,
an
is that?
integrated app like that at this time. A lot of those platforms you just mentioned are responsive in their own right, so that they're apps individually, but no, we do not have them integrated into one app. We can look into that for sure.
I think, Erin, I know we talked about this before. We're gonna look in what you just said, but, is that something that is at the district level that we say, hey, let's all go on one platform instead of Merced has one thing, Livingston has something, and something else?
That's absolutely a district thing.
Our website, for example, Final Site, is responsive to read as an app on your phone if you were just to navigate our website.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into any of those apps is responsive as an app individually. So it all is just sort of separate components right now. But we can look into an integration and what that would require.
Any other questions? I've got a couple. On page 43, I'm looking at the LCAP document. it says the percentage of EL students making progress. Is that, one level or more on the LPAC?
It is,
Okay.
unless they state, because the CD website states, because typically the dashboard does that for us, however, they did not do that. So yes, if they increase one level on the LPAC summative, or they stayed at a 4.
Okay, so that's what we're using as our metric
Correct.
for that particular one.
Correct.
The other is on the appropriately assigned, teachers. I think it was 96. And most of those misassignments were the athletics. And on page, sorry, let me find it, 51, we've got the credentialed staff, appropriateness of the assignment, which is different than being credentialed. So that 96% refers to the credentialed staff,
Correct.
which we're really never going to have 100% because we're always going to have athletics.
Also, without, like our interns, our tips, they don't count toward being fully credentialed either. So that percentage counts those teachers who are also on internships.
So are we really looking at a desired outcome of 100%? I mean, realistically?
Oh, you're saying on the baseline metric.
Because
Is that a
it's,
county
What's the
issue?
goal?
Yeah.
Which part?
Is the county asking for 100%?
No, that was our district goal cap in last year.
because really it's, I mean, it's 100% would be wonderful, but I think realistically, we know we're always going to have, the athletic piece of it.
That's come up with some of our community members when we changed it from 100% a few years ago, and they said, well, why
Why
would
is
you
it
strive?
100%?
Why would
I
you
know.
strive to have 100%? What, you know, so it was really explaining them about some teachers that have athletics and the credentialing.
So I don't know if we're looking at, well, what we could actually do about that, anyway, because you're always going to have coaches with the coaching period, so.
What percentage should that be then?
So what should it be at, or what is it now?
No, what should we change it to so it's realistic?
Striving to keep it above 95%.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll maintain at 95%. I'm just curious. I know we always want 100%, but I know we don't want to cut those opportunities for students either.
Ready for that one. I got everything. Yeah, I was ready for that.
Those are my only questions. Nothing else?
No, I mean, I had a lot of questions last time, and 2 months ago, whatever it was.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm covered.
You covered? Okay.
I will get the Google sheet, I'll clean it up a little and make sure I get a legend of what the colors mean. One color, and then like I said, it'll have the goal on each tab on the bottom, and then it has the actions, and then it has also the metrics right below, and it'll show what they went from the baseline to the next year.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Then at this time, the public is invited to comment on the proposed local control and accountability plan. So we will open the public hearing at 6:38. Any comments?
Close it at 6:38.
Then we will close the public hearing at 6:38. Okay, thank you very much. All right, next we have Superintendent's Goals with Dr. Aguilar.
Yeah, thank you, President Pickle.
You have to go to the bottom,
So this is an update of where we are around the 4 superintendent goals of math, counseling, tier 1, and communications. And again, you've seen this slide before of what we've already accomplished with the exception of implementation and evaluate the services. Where we are currently, we're still trying to confirm dates with Dr. Trish Hatching and her group to help come out and create an evaluation and also steps to create curriculum that will match and mirror what we're trying to accomplish with our school counselors. Throughout the year, this past year, Torrin, Christy, Caitlin, and myself visited every campus. And as we visited every campus, we met with the school counselors. Outside of the school counseling department, we also met with the school psychologists, the student support managers, and other counseling providers that were on that big spreadsheet that I shared with you over the previous board meetings. From those meetings, we took copious notes. We did a really concerted effort to listen, and we came up with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, a SWOT analysis, if you would, from those conversations. What I'm going to share with you, maybe, where am I putting this?
Up here.
To the bottom arrow.
Yep, I'm hitting the bottom arrow.
Okay, great.
You just moved it, there we go, thank you. We came up with strengths. Individual groups are very cohesive, and what that means is, as a school counseling team at Atwater High School, Golden Valley, ViewHack, LCAP, so on, very strong, very cohesive, very congenial, they get along. As a school psychologist group, district-wide, very strong. The meeting that we had with them was incredibly informative for me in my learning. Same thing with the student support managers. Same thing with all the different groups. As we met with them, they are all very strong as a group. There's physical support for counseling. As our students have needed, we have provided. And as you just saw in our local control accountability plan, we're moving to full-time Sierra Vista counseling from part-time. And if you recall, we had Sierra Vista, which are now student support managers. So every year we've been adding layers of counseling. So there is physical support for counseling, and that came out in our conversations with all of our providers. And then also, all of our groups are very collaborative and came up with different models on how to serve our students. Where we are today is not where we were 6 years ago with counselors. Every year in the 6 years that I've been here, we've worked on counseling, and we have really moved the needle to get to the point where we are. And I said this today to all of our principals and associate principals. I am really proud of where we are with our counselors. And conversely, we're at year one right now with our math teachers. That's kind of where we are with our math teachers. That's where we were 6 years ago with our counselors. And we've finally gotten to a point where we can sit down with all of our counseling providers and look at how to effectively work with our students. Weaknesses, lack of team effort among all counseling providers. What that means is, if I'm on a particular campus and I'm a school counselor, the school counselor doesn't feel part of the school psychologist team. And that school psychologist doesn't feel like they're part of that student support manager team. And that student support manager doesn't feel like they're part of the Sierra Vista person. And the Sierra Vista person doesn't feel like they're part of the UC Merced counselors that we have on our campuses. And the UC Merced campus or counselors don't feel like they're part of the college and scholarship counselors. Those are a lot of groups, those are a lot of people, and something that I mentioned to our principals today is that, hey, I'm sharing with you what everyone said. This came out from every group. Hey, Costa, we don't feel like we're part of the school counseling team. Hey, Costa, the school counselors don't feel like they're part of what school psychologists do. So we're fragmented, okay? Lack of district-wide continuity. Obviously, we're doing this work to build continuity. Too much time providing tasks, direct versus indirect services. This was very eye-opening for me. I would walk out to a campus, and I would walk down the hall of the counseling department, and I would often not see any students. And when I'm leaving the campus, I would do the same thing. I'd walk through the counseling department, and I wouldn't see any students. So in my mind, my perception is, what are they doing? Well, as you really sit down and listen, and you really ask why, and you have that root cause analysis of what counselors are doing every day, they are working with students, but indirectly. What does that mean? They're filling out a form, they're emailing, they're making a phone call, they're leaving a message, on and on and on. Those are indirect services. They don't have a person in front of them, but they're doing the paperwork, they're doing all the stuff in the background that our students need. The direct services is when we see the student in front of the counselor. So we need to flip where we are now. I would say 80% of our counselors' time right now, and they could argue my generalization here, but I would say about 80% of our counselors right now are living in the indirect services world. And only 20% of the time is in front of a student. We want to flip that. We want 80% of their time to be in front of a student, 20% of the time to be done on paperwork. People before paper is my mantra. As a high school principal, whether you're on my counseling team, administrative team, whatever support provider you are on that campus, people before paper. Take care of the people in front of you. You can do the paperwork later. Defining roles and responsibilities. What that means is, as we're going out, that's not my job. That's the certain person's job. And that's not my job, that's that other person's job. So that was an area of weakness where people didn't know what everyone else was doing. And in many times we were overlapping services. Opportunities. We have a great opportunity to reorganize our college and scholarship department right now. We have a great opportunity to use our school psychologists and student support managers to train our staff. I shared this again with our associate principals of teaching and learning and guidance today. I asked them, I said, do you know what the two main objectives are of a school counselor according to the Association of School Psychologists? They all answered the first one, testing and assessment. The second objective of a school psychologist is learning behavior. They're in IEPs, they're on the team to help us figure out how to better teach our students that need it the most. In this case, our special education program students. So they're in IEPs because they're giving us feedback about how best students learn that have certain barriers. So they want to do more training, they want to get in front of our staff. And then lastly, reorganizing the placement of interns in Practicum. In the past, we've had our human resources department work with those that are coming onto our campuses, become interns in Practicum. That will still happen. However, the Ed Services department will work with our HR department so that they can work with Ms. Johnson and Ms. Mayo to help place our folks. We need to take advantage of them while they're on our campus. Makes no sense to have 10 on one campus and none on the other. We need to make sure that we place them where they're best going to serve our students and get the best experience. Threats. Site leadership not holding others accountable. Hey, I'll do this, and I'm doing this, but that person isn't. Why am I doing this? That person isn't. Holding people accountable. Leaders not being leaders. That came over and over from all the different groups. And fear of change. Hey, if we're asking our counselors to now be in front of students 80% of the time versus 20, we're asking for a behavior change, right? That's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. That's a behavior change. So there's fear about what that's going to look like. Some recommendations that came out of this work. Counseling curriculum, American School Counseling Association, ASCA, and the Hatching. We're going to work through this year to adopt this curriculum and create the curriculum with the Hatching group to best serve our students. Lead counselors, they want a lead counselor to represent them when we meet as an Ed Services team to make decisions. We have department chairs for counselors on every campus. So we're going to ask the department department chairs to be part of those discussions. And Caitlin Mayo, who is on the board agenda tonight, as a program administrator, will lead a lot of that work. She is, air quotes, an expert in this area. And I don't use the word expert loosely, but she is by far the best read and well-informed person in our district right now to help us lead this work. So as we're building our professional development, as we're building the metrics to analyze how we best serve our students, Caitlin will be leading that work along with Dr. Hatch's group that we're contracting with. And then lastly, this is what keeps me up at night. I was just talking to Dr. Weimer about this last night. Every senior next year is going to have to complete the FAFSA. I wish I could tell you how we're going to do that today, but I don't know. I'm hoping that there's going to be a condensed version of the FAFSA, which I was told. I've not gotten any new information. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this, but we're going to have to do it. But adding some different supports and looking at our AVID program, for example, and how our AVID program supports students going through application processes, FAFSA completion, and those types of things, that's something that we'll have to work with all of our school sites. And that concludes the counseling part of where we are around this board goal. Are there any questions around counseling?
I have one. We're adding additional supports, and you talked about indirect, and my light bulb just kind of went on. Do we need more admin support, clerical support to get all of that paperwork and, done so that counselors are freed up to spend more time?
I think it's organizing our departments, making sure that we're organizing our departments so that we're freeing up our counselors. And I guess where I'm getting at is this. Some counselors really like to do the paperwork. They don't want to hand that off to someone else. They like to do those clerical types of things. We've got to take that away from them and get them in front of students. So it's a lot of our sites working with their teams to organize their teams to make sure that our counselors are in front of students. So today, I would say, let's take a look on that. Let's reorganize and look at our departments before we start making, decisions about adding some clerical folks.
I'm just suggesting we are adding more support. Let's make sure we're adding all the right support so everybody feels supported.
Yeah. It's just like Superintendent Peterson does not want me to spend the majority of my day upstairs in front of a computer doing paperwork. We don't want the same thing. We don't want our counselors to do that all day either. They've got to be out on the campus. They got to be out in front of our parents. They got to be out in front of our students. Got to be working with people. And it's kind of the same thing with this.
Question about the paperwork, and this is just something we've done with paperwork. Is that paperwork that is legally mandated necessary? Is there a way to cut back on it, automating some of it? Are those things that you've looked at?
Yes. And again, we have folks in our organization that have done it a certain way for a very, very long time, like registration for students. There are folks that still like to do it with paper because that's the way they've done it and that's the way they feel comfortable. And then they go back and do it, electronically. So there are just behaviors and customs that every individual has, and it's up to every site, the principal to work through those to be as efficient as they possibly can to meet our goals. So this is part of all of that shift and that work that we'll do with Dr. Trish Hatching about how do they spend their day? How can they be more efficient? How can we get more of their time in front of students instead of in front of paper? So that's a big behavior shift. And again, that's part of the fear. Like, oh my God, I don't have to do something different. I've always done it this way.
And just something you mentioned about the average students and the general population, it's nice to hear that you're looking at expanding some of those services to others because I think the average students do get exposed to a lot of really good things, and it would be nice to get, everyone exposed to those, especially the FAFSA. I've been hearing a lot about that this semester. that will be a great benefit to all students.
Dr. Aguilar, one of the questions I was asked is, how much parent involvement are we looking to add, more parent involvement to the counseling process when they're meeting with the students or when they're not following up, or what can we do to get more parent involvement in their students' process through the counseling? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can say again, part of the light bulb that went off for me was around that direct and indirect services, and when you really sit down and you look at what that counselor's day looks like, they spend a lot of time on the phone. They spend a lot of time on the phone with parents, leaving messages, emailing parents, and trying to connect them. Personally, I think we just have to look at, we have a system set up for what we're getting now. Until we get to a point of, and I don't have the answer to this, but until we have a point where we can meet the needs of where parents are throughout the day, not just during the school hours. I mean, during school hours, think about where parents are. They're at work.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's us being creative and taking advantage of some opportunities of how we can connect with parents when they're at home, not working. I don't have the answer for that, but that is something that we need to look at.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm sure they leave messages. Do most parents respond and call back, or I don't know if you know? I mean, is that something that anyone
I'll
would know?
defer to Megan, being an associate principal of guidance, to maybe answer that. She can answer better than I could.
It's probably hit and miss. We probably get about 20% that call back immediately or answer their phones. We have another 50% that might call back within a few days, and then the rest of the parents, we are unable to get in contact with them. We try home visits, and they sometimes answer the door and sometimes they don't. So it's not a huge, but parent engagement does need to increase.
Do we have the ability to text parents through, I mean, I know parents were, but counselors can as well, through parents?
Yes.
Is that utilized? I mean, I know a lot of times you get a call from the high school, you might think, oh, something's wrong, right? Or it's just another robocall or whatever. I think those have gone way down. But sometimes getting a text message that says, I need to talk to you, I'm trying to get a hold of you, please call. I've never gotten one of those.
I don't know, Megan, do you have?
Yeah, so all of our counselors can utilize Parent Square in that manner to be able to connect and depends how parents have it set up. But also at Golden Valley, all of our counselors have a Google Classroom, and they encourage their parents to join that. So when they send out new information, like I'm in all of those Google Classrooms. So every time something new gets posted, I get an alert on my phone saying this announcement came through or whatnot. So not necessarily texting from their cell phone, but they do have ways to kind of go through that non-scary route for some parents.
Any other questions with counseling? All right. Next up, Matt.
Dr. Aguilar?
Yes.
I gotta go, but I didn't wanna interrupt people, so thank you all, and you have a good night.
Good night.
Thank
So
you.
again, this is our math goal that you've seen, and I've shared with you. But more specifically, I'll go through again some of the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. Some of the strengths that we found going through the process of meeting with our math teachers this past year. They were incredibly collaborative, and they didn't hold back. They were very honest with their feedback. Weaknesses: time for professional development. We just do not have enough time in the day to meet with our teachers, to meet the needs, to get them more of what they need, and they don't have enough time in front of their students, conversely. So time. We need to buy some time, Dr. Whiteheart, if you can put that on a requisition. Opportunities, new integrated math course for this upcoming year. So we're we're going to be working with our math teachers, at least one from every campus, to design an ACT Work Keys / Integrated 1 course. And this will be predominantly for students that would normally come in at an Integrated A class level, so that we make that math relevant to them and they can make the connection. That is an opportunity that we'll take advantage of this next year. And then threats. We have to constantly inform and let our teachers know that it's okay to fail forward and it's okay to try new things in the classroom. And again, going back to changing behavior, we have many of our math teachers that have been doing it a certain way for a very, very long time. So they're afraid to fail. They're afraid to try something new and not be good at it. And then losing autonomy. You know, they're afraid that we're going to ask them to do something, robotic, and that is so far from the truth. A student-centered classroom is going to be defined by what that teacher wants that environment to look like and that learning environment to be in their classroom. So again, just a reminder of, hey, a student-centered classroom is still going to be designed by you, right? You are still the teacher, and you have a lot of autonomy to create that.
What happens, what I am hearing is teachers are afraid of failing students, not failing so much with the technique, that maybe the technique isn't going to work, and then kids aren't going to learn as they should, and now what happens, right? And math is so critical, and we know we've got kids coming into the district who are far behind, and we're trying to get them caught up, and that foundation is very relevant. So how are you talking to teachers about their fear of failing students?
So as you peel back the onion and you look at the root cause of failure, we have a lot of standards in math. We have a lot of standards in education. And it's constantly saying to all of our teachers, but in this case our math teachers, you don't need to teach every standard. We have our essential standards in our district, right? Make sure that you're hitting these essential standards. If you don't get through the entire Integrated 1 book, it is okay. You can pick up where you left off in that Integrated 1 book in Integrated 2, and you can pick it up and you can start there. And if you don't finish the Integrated 2 book, guess what? Collaborate, you talk with your colleagues, and you say, this is where I left off in Integrated 2, and that's where you pick up for Integrated 3, and you get through the curriculum. That sounds so simple, but it's so hard for our teachers to say, but they have to get this standard, and this standard, and this standard, and the other standard in order for them to be prepared. And then what we end up doing is we end up going through curriculum so quickly that we end up failing because our students aren't comprehending the concepts that we want them to acquire. So again, it's going through and changing that kind of mindset and that kind of behavior. That's where I see the most failure from students. Not that they don't understand the concepts. We go too fast sometimes. We need to differentiate, slow down for some, go faster for others. Or our teachers all want to move at the same speed with every student in the classroom, and it's hard to do that.
So is the expectation being adjusted then for Integrated 1 or Integrated 2? Multiple teachers, if one goes much further than another one, and even if you're on the same campus, now the Integrated 2 teacher, where does he or she start if Integrated 1 didn't get as far as, it actually sounds very complicated to me.
It's the collaboration time, it's the meeting time, and the planning time. What we spent in the spring doing with our teachers with the Carnegie Learning Math is to go through and say, these are essential standards. Okay, what lessons are we going to commit to this next year? That was the bulk of the work that we did in the spring. How long do we need to spend on this lesson? How long do we need to spend on this other lesson? So we went through all of that this spring. And it was really powerful to have teachers from across the district doing that work together, not even just by site, but across the district. So one of the weaknesses, again, time for professional development, it's that. Imagine pulling out teachers to do that kind of work.
I mean, that's a day that they've missed in front of their students, and that, you know, they feel the pressure of having to get through the material, but then we're asking them to come out of class to work on these. So we just have to be very mindful, very strategic about when we do pull our teachers out to do this work, that we do have a tangible outcome that comes out of every one of these meetings. And right now we do. We have a board goal. We have quarter 3 and quarter 4 assessments. We have essential standards. We have teachers looking at the curriculum and looking at what lessons are going to teach, what standards are going to teach next year. And again, it's the mindset. It's okay if you don't get through the entire integrated 1 book. You can start in integrated 2 where you left off. We used to do that in Spanish. I didn't get through all of the Spanish 1 book. So I would say, Lisa Allison, this is where I left off. Spanish 1. I had most of the Spanish 1 classes. This is where I left off, so this is where you need to pick up. So at the beginning of the year, most of our students checked out a Spanish 1 book. They usually finished it the first 2 months of the school, sometimes sooner, and they'd go pick up the Spanish 2 book, and then they'd start. They'd get the preterite tense before the end of the second year of Spanish.
But there is some expectation to cover certain material, certain standards with each one of those courses. Otherwise, you're potentially creating larger gaps, and you've got 5 different integrated 1 teachers all ending in a different spot, and that integrated 2 teacher's got every one of those kids, or a sample of them, and where are they starting? So there is some expectation that you're covering those essential standards within each one of those courses, right? It's not too loose where we're creating our own problem, so to speak.
We have been too loose, and now that we're bringing in those assessments, now there's a marker.
Right.
Now teachers know where they need to be to get to that quarter 3, to get to the quarter 4. And then, oh, by the way, we're also working on quarter 1 and quarter 2. So for 23-24, we'll have benchmarks for quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now there are going to be those benchmarks. There are going to be those parameters, so now we know. Because we have been too loose, and you're absolutely correct.
We're also working with MCOE, and I was an English teacher, so I didn't want to bring it up.
Numbers aren't your thing?
The numbers aren't my thing. But MCOE showed us some great techniques to make math teaching more efficient. You know, they took us through a process. They said, if you were teaching this concept, normally a teacher would do this, and this to try to get kids to understand this concept. And then she pulled something up, and she goes, but I can show kids this concept in 10 minutes by using this app. And she started moving things around, and she's like, do you see how they get the reference, and they can see it better and understand it quicker, as opposed to, you know, what we did before. So essential standards, along with kind of, you know, newer, more efficient things that MCOE is going to show us, will probably help us with it.
And that's a great segue. That's enough of constant talking. I think I'm out of air minutes. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Johnson.
Please don't ask me any math questions, okay? All right. So here's the MTSS goal, and in terms of the goal wording and the terminology, here's the terminology that we want to be consistent and everybody to understand. You know, number 1 is high quality instruction, school-wide expectations, academic behavior and social emotional, benchmarking, which is testing, and screening and monitoring. And I have another presentation where I'll go deeper into school-wide or academics and behavior and screening and monitoring. But the update is this. This goal will be measured 2 ways. Implementation, you know, going horizontally, and now we're putting metrics to it. So I've come up with a list of metrics underneath each goal, each term there, and it's in the hands of the principals. They are reviewing it. They've kicked back some, but I just want to let you know that that's where we are. The next time, we probably should have metrics for the numbers. Any questions for me? Remembering, I'll be back up here discussing this. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Manuel, will you please advance? Good evening. When we started planning for this presentation a few weeks back, we did not have our communications director situation all figured out yet. And so being the person who oversees the communication department, I was prepared to step in and cover this part. Fortunately, tonight, pending board approval, we have a new communications director that's here that I'll hand this off to in just a moment. Ms. Viviana Fuentes. She's been with our district for 4 years now, as part of the communications department. She loves this district, the staff, the students working in this community. She has a master's degree in business administration and a concentration in marketing. She is certified in crisis communications. Very excited about her new role, and I'm excited for her. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and she'll walk you through the brief update about where we are with the communications plan and talk about some other exciting things kicking off with next year.
I'm excited to be here and present to you and give you guys a quick update. Today, we're able to discuss the communications plan rubric with site administrators, just give them an update on where we're at. And tomorrow we'll be going over more in detail about the tier support systems we have available for each school site, depending on where they see fit that they need more support or not. And in addition to that, we hope we will help them implement plans and kind of just figure out a system and way to keep following up with school sites, meeting with them and their site administration team. And for the district, on what's going on currently this summer and what I plan on doing, well, I kicked off a student internship that will be online. It was offered to all students at all school sites. That internship will consist of them working with me on a weekly basis this summer and provide them basically skill development in digital media, and they'll be able to create content for the district and basically just shine student voice and be able for them to be leaders, build communication skills, and hopefully be helpful for the resume, or just be knowledgeable about what career opportunities there are in the district, in communication. So I'm excited to do that, and I have 18 students signed up as of right now, so it closes today. So we'll see the total count tomorrow morning. And then for the kickoff, we'll have a kickoff. We haven't done one since 2019. So we'll be hosting one on August 8th. It'll be the same schedule that we have done in the past years, which will be a morning kickoff. And we're coordinating on finalizing a schedule. The speaker should be booked this week. And in addition to that, we have worked on ways to promote that to staff. Thank you.
How did students apply for the internship?
It was posted on all our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. In addition to that, it was sent out to the activities directors, and they sent an email out, and I was tagged in my email as well. In addition to that, I reached out to CTE teachers that I knew that might have students interested, and I reached out to journalism clubs and stuff like that. So we just kind of use word of mouth to kind of spread the word, and hopefully we'll see how many.
Where does the actual application reside?
It's on a Google form, and it is linked on currently. We have a live link on the Twitter, so basically on our social media platforms, and then that link is also being shared. It doesn't have like a home page. Yeah.
Can you share a link with the board members for that?
Yeah.
I was curious. People were asking me, and I said, well, I'm sure you can go to the district website and find it, but it couldn't. So.
Yeah, it was very yeah. Okay, I can post that right now, actually. So.
Well, it's awesome. It's really awesome that you're
Yeah.
doing that. I'm so excited for our students. So thank you.
Yeah.
The 18 students, which school sites are they from and what year?
I have about an average of 2 students at least from each school site, so I do have a student, that's great. It ranges. I have a diverse range of students. I have some students that are sophomores that have never been involved in any student clubs or activities, so this will be like their first experience. And then I have some mega involved upcoming seniors that have, you know, that have been in many clubs or sports, and they're just excited just to build upon the skills they already have. So I plan to build to have units to partner the upcoming seniors with the sophomores and hopefully build that mentorship and build some form of guidance for them as well.
Right. Now, what is the length of the internship again?
It's gonna start next week, and it will be, until the week of August 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. And we will move on to, proposed 2022-23 budget and public hearing. Dr. Weimer.
Evening, and I just want to point out one of the differences. He encourages Mr. Aguilar to get out, Dr. Aguilar to get out and everything. He locks me in my office. I never get to leave or go anywhere. No, I thought I'd throw that in.
Direct versus indirect. I got it.
So very quickly, and thank you all. I know you're all here for the budget presentation. There's no other reason you would come to a board meeting in June. But just a reminder of the interesting nature of the way budgeting is done in the state of California. Our budget is based off of the state budget. The state budget is not due till next week. So we're having our budget meeting tonight and on the 15th to propose and finalize our budget, but the state budget will not be done until June 15th. So we're operating on a bunch of assumptions, and this year, probably even as much as last year, those assumptions are going to be wrong. And so you will see changes, and the first interim will be probably much more accurate than the budget we're going to be looking at in June, because we won't know everything prior to being able to pass our budget. But we still have to say that we're going to pay our bills. Trailer bills then are supposed to be done by July 1st, because that's when their new fiscal year starts. So a lot of the details, even though they passed the budget on the 15th, we don't even get till sometime in July. If you look at the first governor's budget, 2.48% was the COLA. The COLA is now at 6.56% in the governor's budget. It's in various places in the legislative budget, anywhere between 6 and 10. So we're waiting to see what that number comes out to. We don't know what that will be. The May revise also contains an adjustment to the base LCFF formula, an adjustment to ADA calculations to offset COVID ADA losses from this current year, not next year, but this year, and a one-time allocation. These are all different from what's in the legislature, and that's what's being discussed right now. And so none of that is included in this budget because we don't know what it's going to be. This is probably one of the most differences I've seen between a governor's budget and a legislative budget in the time that I've done this. So it will be interesting to see who actually wins those debates and who comes out on top and what we actually have as a state budget. The 24-25 fiscal cliff, I'm going to say it again, it's hard to sit here when we have one-time monies and state revenues are the highest they've ever been and talk about a cliff, but there is a cliff. All of the one-time monies do run out in that 24-25 year. Based on our current staffing and expenditure levels, starting in 24-25, ongoing expenses, not one-time COVID expenses or whatever, but ongoing expenses will be higher than revenues, and that will result in a deficit not covered by COVID or relief funds. We will be doing negative spending, deficit spending for the next 2 years, but the deficit spending we're doing in the next 2 years is because we already received one-time money, and now we have to use that one-time money. So we're spending more than we're bringing in because we already have that money here. 24-25, that's not true anymore. We're spending money we don't have at that particular point. So in 24-25, revenues are predicted to be 186 million, while expenses and transfers totaling 190 million, a deficit of $3.7 million. That grows then to $5.4 million deficit in 25-26. Bad news. Last line is a very important good news. A fix to ADA accounting and a return to pre-COVID ADA percent probably will close those gaps. So once we know what the state's going to do with ADA, and if we can get back to a regular year where we're running at about 94 to 96% attendance, that will take care of these gaps because we are using current information and our current levels. And if that can get back to normal, those gaps that we see in those out years will then go away. So for the 22-23 budget, it includes the ESSER plants with the largest expenditures being $10 million for new HVAC units, Golden Valley and other places, $2 million technology infrastructure upgrades and expenses, increasing the Sierra Vista counseling from 1 to 2, 1 every 2 sites to 1 per site. Those are one-time expenses again, and the continuation of Panorama and social economic PL supports. Includes an SRO at each site, allocations for metal detectors, more radios, other safety needs. Funds the final state budget deals are expected to cover 5 new bus drivers, moving 1 part-time campus liaison to a full-time liaison, and then a district literacy coach and an additional section supporting intervention. CTE pathway grants, ESSER funds, professional development funds, A through G grant, assets grant, and LCAPs are all specified plans on how the monies that will be spent. So we have large amounts of money that are coming in. Those plans, which you've already seen, most of them tell us how those funds are going to be going. But again, several of those are going to put us in deficit spending because we have the money now. We spend it over the next couple of years. Some of the things that you're going to see in the non-general fund, Fund 21, which is our bond fund, and Fund 43, which is our facility fund, you'll see $29 million. Projects that are already encumbered, so they're not in that, are the MHS pool. Yeah, if it goes over $6 million, then we have to go and use that other fund. AHS pool, finishing the Livingston concession stand, the Golden Valley dugout, the Merced High Stadium, El Capitan roof and brick, and then that's what's already paid out of the 2.7. We also then have to cover out of that 29 the rest of the brick, 12 million. The property options we have out at the Business Parkway, which is about 4.5 million. Finish developing that property, which could take up to 4 million. Phase 1 of half of the stadium, El Capitan and Buhack, which would be $8 million, about $4 million each. Working to identify funding sources for phase 2 of each stadium, exercising the remaining options and developing railroad properties is something we're hoping we can have figured out here as we move into finalizing what the budget is going to be. Once we know the final pieces of that state budget, we will most likely have the identified funding for all of those projects for the last. Fund 20 is our post-employment benefits, and you'll see $11 million in there. This provides resources to pay the district portion of retiree health benefits from Fund 20 rather than the general fund, so it takes a little bit of a burden off of our general fund. For those who aren't familiar with what that is, after a retiree leaves the district and retires until they are on, I'm not on that program yet, I have a few more years. Medicare, thank you. I'm not quite there yet, I'm getting close. Until they move over to Medicare, we still pay the employer part of their health insurance plan, and then they give us the funds for their part of the plan. So if they want the basic plan, which they don't have to pay anything else for, then the district is covering that expense for our retirees until they qualify for Medicare service. You're going to see the other portion of that, the part that they pay in, that the employees pay to us to pay for their retirees pay to us. You're going to see that on the resolution a little bit later, because we have to commit those funds so that they are not sitting in the general fund, so that we don't go over our limit on our cap of reserves. So right now, that money goes into the general fund and it just sits there. We have to commit it, otherwise we go over on our cap. So you'll see that come back in a little bit. This will also include funds to pay for a PARS so that they do not continue to come from the general fund. We have 2 PARS that are currently outstanding. And so each year, the payment for those comes out of the general fund. We will now be able to pay for those out of this fund and not have to take those amounts out of the general fund. It includes funds to pay for a PARS in the spring of 2024. 2018-19 would be paid off at that part, so only the 2021 one would still be remaining. The purpose of doing a PARS is to reduce the cost, step and column of the general fund cost. So one of the things that happens every year that we say, every year, costs go up. We could give a raise of 0, we're not going to. We could give a raise of 0, and our costs would still go up. Because you're going to go up step and column, and everybody is going to move based on where they are on the step and column. That then costs us money. If we then offer a PARS and the people at this end of the scale retire, and now everybody's at this end of the scale, that increase every year is not as much. And so it offsets that cost of how much we have every time we do a PARS by putting people at the lower part of the scale rather than having them at the higher. It also includes possibly a 2027, but no earlier, a second PARS that we would be able to do to offer the same thing, to reduce that ongoing cost and not have it affect the general fund. So it's basically putting one-time monies aside right now to be able to relieve those pressures on the general fund over the next 5 to 6 years by offering the PARS retirement program. And those would be based on offering the same ones that we've offered in the past couple of years.
That's the end. The last, that's the last slide.
Is it?
Is that it?
Next
Oh,
one.
we like it, yeah.
Next presentation.
Keep going.
That better not be gonna jib anywhere. And not be trending. So this is our regular presentation then that you are used to. That was my commentary, and now we get to go back to the wonderful one that you've probably seen 40,000 times by now. But it will basically show that we can pay our bills. Always a good thing. This is what I'm talking about here. This is where we're at ADA. This is where we used to be. We've grown in enrollment, but our ADA sits like this, and this is all because of COVID. So if the governor and the legislature give us a fix, that's going to help us take care of that in this year and our future years. And if we don't have to do quarantine anymore, and this number gets back up in here, that's going to take care of a lot of those issues that we see in that 24, 25, and 25, 26. It will go away. That's not a very good budget term, but it will go away if that gets fixed.
What do you believe our actual enrollment was this year?
Our actual enrollment or our actual ADA?
Well, enrollment.
Enrollment. I will get that for you. It is right around 11,000. Usually we run about mid 80, 84, 85% is our ADA from enrollment. We can look at it over the. So the LCFF components for next year, we do have the state aid, the EPA, which is just something we do on paper. It doesn't really. Anyway, local property taxes, and then so the total of the LCFF is 145 million. These are the revenue assumptions that we will get an increased COLA of 6.56%. The ADA projection is still at that number. So as that ADA comes back to normal, that will be good news for us. We will get the funds for that, and that will start to take care of those out-year expenses, problems with that deficit spending. That gives you the lottery money, COLA on state and local share of other funds. Revenues then total with the LCFF, federal income, other states is 177 million. And this is why we do the PARs in those off years, that 1.5 automatic increases. We can do PARs, then that brings those expenses down because we're going from the top end of the scale to the bottom end of the scale with newer employees. It does build in 2.48% salary increase. And for everybody who's listening, I know that's not where we're going to end. All right, so I got that out right now. That was what we had agreed to if that was COLA. That is not COLA. And so we are back at the negotiating table, and we will be back in August once we have all of the information for the budget. That number will most likely change. And that gives you the assumptions on the transfers out to the different funds. So as you remember, I just said 177 million was the revenues. That's 197 million on expenses. But again, it's not bad in the next 2 years because that deficit spending is spending the one-time monies that we already received. So we've received them, we have deadlines, we have to spend that money. That's why we have a negative balance this year. That's why we have a negative balance next year. The following year, if we don't have ADA fixes, then we see a structural deficit where it's not that one-time money. It's actually ongoing operating costs and ongoing operating revenues that don't match up. For this year and next year, that's not a problem. It's the one-time money that we already have deadlines on that's being spent. That's why we have the deficit. So the general fund summary, you can see the estimated actuals from 21-22. Then you can now see the original budget. And you're going to see here, that's that 213 in revenue versus 177. That's because of all of the one-time funds that we've already received. And that's why you're going to see this deficit right here, is because we have all of that extra one-time money that we received in there, and now we're going to be spending it. Ending balance components, again, we have the restricted amounts reserved for economic uncertainties. We also use then Fund 17 for economic uncertainties, and we keep a 10% between this reserve and what's in Fund 17, so that we have a 10% reserve. And again, this is where you see 21-22 estimated actuals, and then you'll start to see, as we get through this year, a large portion of the one-time funds get spent down. You'll see a little bit of a decrease here as we spend the last part of that one-time funds, but then you start to see a structural deficit here. But again, we're expecting, and we'll know better at first interim, that when we get those ADA fixes and we get ADA back to normal, that structural deficit will go away. These are the assumptions for the out years for 23-24, 24-25. You can see the revenues, COLA that's expected right now, statutory rates for STRS and FERS. And again, this is always a good sign to see FERS possibly going down a little bit, STRS staying the same. These are our other fund balances. Adult ed, of course, we get from the consortium, so the money comes in and it goes out. It's done through the consortium. Child Development Center, this is the money that's used to pay for the Child Development Center at East Campus. The nutritional services, the money that comes in here is from the free and reduced lunch program that we get. Those are our meal reimbursements. People transportation, this is money to go in to offset the white fleet replacement and bus replacement. Maintenance is money that goes into things like roofs and HVAC systems and those types of things. The building fund, Fund 21 and Fund 43, I already talked about on the other slide. Those were the projects that were listed that will be covered under Fund 21 and 43. The building fund, which is our bonds, and the capital outlay, which includes the settlement for El Capitan and other funds that we're using for all the projects there. We do have developer fees of $10 million. We are looking in ways to be able to access those funds to be expanding our campuses. Rather than doing portables, maybe we try to figure out what kind of actual permanent buildings we could be building with some of those funds to increase capacity on some of our campuses. Special reserves, Fund 17, and this again are reserves. The amount you saw on the other screen plus this one gives us our 10% reserves. Special reserve for post-employment, that's what the PARs and the paying of the health benefits and things will come out of that particular fund rather than the general fund. And Fund 51 is bond interest. That's a county one that they make us put on here and we don't get to touch it. So we do have a positive certification. We will be able to pay our bills for the next 2 years, and hopefully after they pass the state budget, we will be able to pay for them for year 3 and 4 as well. We can pay for them all. It's just how low our reserves go if they don't fix the ADA.
Questions?
There, I mean, generally, I think our reserve has been somewhere between 10 and 12 million. Is there I think we're comfortable there as salaries increase, however, it's a little uncomfortable, like it should be higher.
Yeah, there are 2 slides that it's on. So if I go to that one right there, we have reserves in the general fund, which is 9 million, but then we also have the 11 million in Fund 17. So between the two, there's 20. That's probably a little bit higher than we're going to be allowed to have by the end of next year. So we are going to have to commit some of those funds, but we would be able to keep a 10% reserve. So if we're talking about a $177 million budget, we would be looking at about $17 million is the cap that we'd be able to have. When good times are good for multiple years, the cap kicks in automatically at the state. That has kicked in. So next year, 10% reserve is the maximum we can have. Anything above that, we have to commit those funds. We will have some resolutions throughout the year to commit certain pots of money,
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Weimer.
Thank you.
And at this time, the public is invited to comment on the proposed 2022-23 budget. So we'll open the public hearing at 7:34. Any comments? And we'll close the public hearing at 7:34. Okay. Next, we have student discipline. Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Johnson.
Good evening. In an effort to create consistency across sites, the Merced Union High School District Discipline Matrix was developed with input from all administrators about 5 years ago. The matrix reflects the mandates from the state to provide interventions to correct behavior instead of focusing on exclusionary discipline practices. The matrix is strictly a guide for administrators to use. Some key points that have been communicated to site administrators include using data to analyze and monitor trends so that areas of focus for interventions can be identified. In addition, it has been communicated that data should never be hidden and entries should never be made in a way to mask reality or distort the data in order to make a school look good. As I mentioned, the matrix is simply a guide, and a principal can use alternative dispositions or consequences to those listed if the situation dictates. The matrix includes the big 5 reasons for mandatory recommendation for expulsion. These violations include possession of a firearm, brandishing a knife, selling or furnishing drugs, sexual assault and battery, and possession of explosives. It also includes violations that can lead to a recommendation for expulsion on a first offense, such as for serious injury to another student or battery on an employee. Violations such as possession of a knife, robbery, extortion typically lead to suspension instead of expulsion on a first offense, unless it meets the Ed Code requirement of proving that a student is a continuing danger. For example, if during an investigation it is revealed that the student brought the knife to school with the intent to use it, then we may recommend expulsion on a first offense. Or if the student has multiple offenses, such as confrontive behavior or gang behavior, we might recommend expulsion on the first offense of the knife. These are case-by-case situations. California moved away from zero tolerance policies many years ago. Offenses for drugs, major disruption, willful use of violence against another student, fighting, bullying, sexual harassment, and threatening require us to address the issue by not only applying a consequence, but also providing an intervention to correct the behavior. All of these incidents have consequences that range from time in the intervention center where the student is not part of the general school population to a home suspension. In addition, interventions include counseling, SSTs, Suite 360 lessons about the behavior, time in our day reporting center at East Campus, and time in the Understanding Drugs and Alcohol program. Other incidents that require us to provide interventions prior to expulsion include upbraiding, which is defined as direct insults to staff, as well as confrontive behavior. Also included are hostile environment, theft, vandalism, and possession of drug paraphernalia. The steps for these major discipline issues do not start over each school year. They are tracked from the time a student enters high school until the time they graduate. In other words, if a student has a fight during their freshman year, their discipline steps do not start over their sophomore year. If the student were to get in a fight their sophomore year, we count that as a second offense fight. Our discipline data for the 21-22 school year is provided on this slide. I also included the data from 18-19 as this was the last full school year we had prior to COVID. All violations are listed with the total number of incidents in the district. Remember, this is the total number of incidents, not the total number of unique students. Our most repetitive issues appear to be absenteeism and tardies. I won't read all of these, but our data shows that we did have an increase in students using drugs, students fighting, and students who brought knives to school. Our data also shows that we had fewer instances of confrontive behavior and gang behavior. In talking with districts throughout the state, it feels that student discipline issues were a topic of concern for many. We know that COVID did not help this situation. Many of our students were out of school for almost 2 years and were not used to the structure and routine of school and may have forgotten some of the behavioral expectations that we have of them. This is not an excuse for poor behavior, but it is something that the district recognizes. Superintendent Peterson asked each school site to collect feedback about discipline and safety on campus. We received a lot of useful information. I compiled the feedback into a list of the most common topics that staff, both certificated and classified, mentioned in their feedback. Not surprising, tardies were pretty high on that list, which also correlates to our discipline data. Other concerns are also listed here. Again, I won't read them all to you, but you can see that some of the top concerns, in addition to tardies and cell phones, are students being out of class during instructional time, the belief that students don't have consequences for misbehavior, and a lack of communication about how a discipline issue was handled. Drugs and vaping are of high concern, as well as areas of campus that are unsupervised, a need for more liaisons, explicit instruction about behavioral expectations, and streamlining the entry point for all people coming onto campus so we can monitor it more effectively. Now that we have seen the data and we know the staff concerns, what are our next steps? We will be adding additional liaison support, increasing Sierra Vista clinicians, and providing intervention support sections at each site. Admin staff will attend the Safe and Civil Schools Conference this summer, which will focus on student behavior. We expect student support APs to hold more frequent reviews of safety drills and protocols, and we expect them to have a committee that meets quarterly to review discipline data, policies, safety, and school climate. We will ask our SROs to provide gang education training to staff. We have also created an Innovate Ed course to help identify reasons that students join gangs and how to intervene in the gang recruitment process. School sites will be expected to fully implement Character Strong. We expect explicit direct instruction of school-wide behavioral expectations to happen more often. Student support APs will hold monthly liaison meetings and will review CPI techniques. We will encourage student support APs to communicate with liaisons and referring staff about the outcomes of discipline incidents. Our additional sections for intervention support will also allow for more frequent check-ins and interventions with students who are on our radar for behavioral incidents. And finally, we will be exploring requiring IDs, using a single entry point for entry, and an electronic scanning program for all visitors who come to campus.
So all of this kind of flows into MTSS and behavior, what we talked about before. So academic behavior, social, emotional, and screening and monitoring are the things we're going to discuss. So with academic behavior and social emotional, MTSS calls for explicitly teaching students positive academic behaviors, and the social emotional behaviors will be covered with our Character Strong. And we will also use Panorama to kind of check in with kids to get a general vibe of the campus or drill down to a particular kid if we need more information. So we need to define and explicitly teach behaviors that lead to success, and then create a token system to acknowledge those behaviors, right? So it's nurtured heart on steroids, basically. The theory is you have to reward 50% of your class, your school in order to start tipping it towards positive school culture. We need to discuss and explain the discipline matrix to all stakeholders. Everybody should understand that if you do this, this is the consequence. And currently we don't do that. Right now we walk in the classroom and say, hey, these are the 5 things you get expelled for. So don't do them. We need to go deeper, you know, and the pandemic has just made this thing totally worse, because we talk about learning loss with kids, and in our brains we're thinking standards, we're thinking that sort of thing. But what they've missed is they've missed getting along with other people. They've missed exercising this part of their brain of making good decisions. They haven't had to be in that school arena and deal with other people, make good decisions, be on time for class, you know, don't shoot that spitball, whatever that is. So they haven't exercised that part. We're going to use restorative questioning and mediations, and the goal of restorative practices, people say, well, there's no consequences with restorative justice, and that's simply not true. You still get the consequence. But we dig deeper into what's going on with the kid. It's not, why did you do that? Because what do kids say when you say, why did you do that? Well, I don't know why I did that. I just did that. So restorative justice says, no, let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about what you were thinking when you did that. And how do you think that affected somebody else, right? Deeper into the issue. Behavior support plans should be the norm. We need to engage parents in the discipline process a lot better than we're doing. And we need to implement interventions, but understand that interventions are not a quick fix. You don't work with a kid and the next day he goes out and you're like, this kid's got to go. Well, interventions take 6 to 8 weeks to kick in. So you have to work with students. The next part is screening and monitoring, which means creating an early warning system for students who have academic, behavioral, or social emotional needs, and use that data to drive decisions, conversations, and interventions. For example, Aries Analytics is a wonderful tool. You can put a group of kids, boom, I want these 30 kids, and I want to know how they're doing on grades. I want to know if they get in trouble. I want to know how they're doing on tardies or truancies. You push a button, those kids pop up, and all their data is right there. So it's easy. You got to create a monitoring system that's easy, because you can create regulations that just overwhelm the system. We don't want to overwhelm the system. That's what's kind of happening now. Reading inventory is a reading assessment that we give to kids. So we give it to all kids. I think we screen 95% of our students, and I'll be back in a week or so to discuss reading with you all. But reading inventory gives us data. So, you know, why are we here with Dr. Wyman is not doing well in English? So why isn't he doing well in English? Well, let's look at his reading level. Well, he reads on a 5th grade level. Well, that's a problem. Maybe he should be in the reading intervention class. We need to start making decisions based on data, not kind of how we feel. We need to form MTSS teams to discuss specific students, the interventions, the solutions, and consequences. We need to have more SSTs where we bring caring adults together sooner and more frequently. Tier 2 students. Aries tells us a list of kids who got into a fight, brought a knife, drugs, whatever. We tend to treat it like when the kids come back, you know, they're fixed because they spent the summer away from us. Not true. You know, still Tier 2. We need to address them as their Tier 2 and probably engage them and start building the relationship immediately. Including counselors and mental health professionals and intervention staff and admin meetings. I think that's going to be huge for us because counselors and mental health professionals know way more about adolescent development than we do, right? So we need to bring them into the fold and pick their brains about what's going on with our kids. And we need to make a point of knowing who our students are in the first 6 weeks. That goes back to the universal screening. If we give a reading test in the first couple of weeks and we see that this kid is in an English class, but he reads on a 5th grade level, now we know to intervene right now because we have the data and put him in the reading class. We need to create more pods like that. This is kind of the cycle of an MTSS team. It's from the professional counselor. You develop the team, you evaluate the needs and organize plan of action, administer the universal screening. Right now it's panorama and reading inventory. Evaluate that data and place students in the tiers. Figure out the service delivery, monitor and follow up action with kids, evaluate effectiveness, and plan for the future is what MTSS is all about. It's being more proactive than waiting for something to happen and then being reactive. Reason why we do MTSS. That is the last slide. Do you have questions for Mrs. Johnson or myself?
Can you explain what panorama is?
We talk a lot about SEL and how kids are doing kind of inside and how they're doing with
SEL is social emotional.
Yeah, sorry I butchered that earlier.
So what it is kids take a survey, I think it's 4 times a year, and it kind of checks in on them on how they're doing, how they feel about school, how they feel about their classwork, you know, how they feel about kind of regulating their emotions and whatnot. It's an easier way to cover an entire campus than going out and talking to individual kids.
Sure.
So it's just kind of a starter.
So we do it 4 times a year at each
Yes,
site, and then compare the data?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It also helps us form groups for counseling if we see themes.
Was it Character Strong that you were saying is like Nurtured Heart on steroids, or no?
No, well, MTSS, I mean,
Oh,
NHA is all about recognizing a kid's greatness in the moment, you know, and some kids haven't had a lot of great moments. And so when they do something well, you want to acknowledge that, kind of obligate them to continue that behavior. So that's Nurtured Heart, and that's MTSS. That's kind of what we're doing.
Okay.
Character Strong is lessons about social emotional learning.
So is Character Strong new to campuses?
We adopted it last year. Golden Valley implemented it to Fidelity. They were the only site that did that. Everybody else kind of played with it a little bit to figure it out, and it's going to be fully implemented at all sites next year.
And then just in specifically, probably more what you talked about, Christy, but was also reflected in the LCAP was, you know, staff and student safety, and we saw a decline from the last time it was measured. And I don't think that, I don't know if that's a reflection of what's going on our campuses and our community, or more of a national and global phenomenon. But do you think the work that you're doing on this will help with that as well? Making people, I mean, staff have gone through a lot this year, right? I mean, students have come back and, like you said, they're quirky and emotional and doing dumb stuff, and
That's the goal.
staff, yeah.
That is the goal.
Yeah, the goal of MTSS is to not have kids fly from tier 1 to tier 3, right? The social emotional learning might help some kids kind of recognize what's going on with themselves, and so they don't end up in the counselor's office or with the student support manager. You know, some are still gonna end up there, but less. Because we're overwhelming the system by not sitting them down and going, listen, do you not understand what a healthy relationship looks like?
And right now, we wait. We wait for a student to use drugs, we wait for a student to get in a fight, and then we assign, counseling services. If we know that students are already having issues and we assign those counseling services prior to, then we might prevent them from happening.
Do we know with incoming freshmen,
We know.
do we know, I mean, on one hand, you hate for kids to come in and already be labeled, right? But if kids have issues and they can utilize these positive resources, you want to be able to have a positive impact right away, and I'm just curious about.
I think our feeder schools work with the individual schools, so Megan, you might want to talk about this. So Megan knows who her feeder schools are, and those administrators talk and give her a heads up. Yeah, so for example, knowing that these freshmen are coming in and not really sure what we're getting, I know that myself and other APs of guidance reached out and said, hey, send me the information. So we got information on students that have 504s, specific health plans. Our nurses talked to, the feeder school nurses. I talked to the other administrators over there saying, hey, who do I need to be concerned about? Who needs the social emotional support? Who needs, who do we need to keep eyes out? Who has gained connections? All of that stuff, so that we know what we need to do to support them as soon as they step foot on our campus.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have Employee Association comment period, CSCA.
Oh, boy.
You're up.
I want to say I heard some wonderful things tonight. So, my little stuff, I'm gonna have to try to gather through it, because they hit on everything pretty much that I wanted to speak on. And I'm very impressed, I'm proud of you guys. I just wish we could have been there yesterday, but we're here today, and we got a plan. So, good evening, President Pickles, board members, Superintendent Peterson, and cabinet. I want to start off by Dr. Aguilar, CSE, owes you a big apology for the Zoom disrespect that you received from one of our members. That's not what we do. And just know that as the president of CSEA, I take it to heart, because when our members are being talked down to or mistreated, I come unglued. So when it's one of our members being disrespectful to a cabinet member, we just don't tolerate it. So we do apologize, and please accept it.
Thank you.
We're building that bridge, okay? I'm gonna kind of get through this really quick here. Hopefully, I have a whole bunch of stuff I want to say, but gosh, you guys just must have been reading my mind. So, if you see something, say something. We've seen the culture changing. We said we felt like we needed more eyes and ears on campus, and now we're gonna be getting extra layers on. The only one thing that we have not had yet or heard about is the fight protocol. We're still requesting for a fight protocol. I love the survey. I love the idea that each site was able to reach out to individuals and they actually fill out the survey. But one of the things that I think that we're actually missing, surveys are wonderful. But what happened to just good old-fashioned sit-down roundtable with the school board, DTA, CSEA, somebody from the district, somebody from the community? You know, sometimes we overlook things because we're so busy up the trying to put it together when the answer may be down here with the people that actually do the work.
just wanted to remind you guys about, the $35 that was taken off the table last summer for summer school. Classified haven't forgot that, okay? We want to keep in mind the CSCA fought against nepotism and cronyism. We don't want to see people retiring and family members or ex-secretaries, slip into that position. We've come too far to turn back now. CSCA would like to, know when the ban for classified will be lifted so they will be able to go, to conferences to better their skills and knowledge. Okay, so we also want to give a friendly reminder that CSCA has requested for job descriptions for all certificated administration management positions. We have yet to receive that. Miss Mandy Ballinger. We want to thank you for working with CSCA to keep our 8-hour jobs on the inside, giving classified the opportunity to grow and advance through the district. Mandy, we want to thank you and your team for including us in the professional development for the summer. And just, you've been there just to balance the table when needed, and we appreciate that, and to keep me in line, okay? Let's see. So to end it on a good note for this year, the school year's over with and we made it. CSCA is wishing everyone a blessed summer.
Thank you.
I've got a question as far as, the CSCA, you mentioned the PD ban. Is that lifted, or are they gonna be encouraged to attend PDs in the upcoming school year?
We're offering a professional development strand for the summer institute for,
He's talking about traveling.
Traveling, yeah. Is there anything out in the works for them? I mean, perhaps the conference up in Oregon, because, obviously CSCA is, on the ground with our team, as far as, probably the first one that have student contact, in the morning to address needs, as they see fit, that I'm sure they would benefit from, some of the skills you guys are gonna learn up at the conference. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there on that.
As we've been adjusting to all of the changes over the last couple of years, we have to take into account, labor laws. And so there are exempt employees and non-exempt employees. Non-exempt employees are hourly employees, and so they cannot voluntarily go to professional development events because they are technically work-related. An exempt employee can, because you're a salaried employee and you can go on a weekend, you can go travel, and so we're working through what that would entail. Because if you're an hourly employee, you would have to get paid overtime and hourly wages while you were at those events. So we're working through all of the details and what that means and what will be available, what would. It probably will not impact at all local things, PD is county PD that we offer ourselves. It would especially be ones where you had over. That's where it gets really into the labor law, where you have to say, okay, are we going to have to pay overtime for somebody for 8 hours to travel time? Do you have to pay them while they're traveling, and overtime while they travel to and from the event? And so.
And then as far as fight protocols, I'm sure we have something. So that's something that we have to revisit due to the ongoing issues of students back on campus full-time and what's been happening there. Is that what you're getting at, B?
Yeah. I mean, we have fight protocols. I think what B is talking about is, they want to know exactly what to do when.
Staff engagement?
Yeah, and so, Christie will
At one
continue.
point, liaisons were told they could not lay hands on students at all. And then all of a sudden, now they can lay hands. They just want to make sure that they are protected by the district because of all that has taken place. And so a fight protocol would be great. In prisons, you're not supposed to go into a cell, even if somebody hangs themselves, until you have somebody there with you because it could be a trap. So they need expectations to know what is expected of them.
We shared that, at CPI training. all write down what our expectations are, of how they respond during a fight. Mandy's pulling it up right now.
We're requesting for a booklet, so at one point there was something out there.
Yeah.
We don't want them writing down anything, we want it in writing from the district.
Part of training.
Just need to get on the same
Yeah.
page
Yes.
about what it is they want.
Thank you.
Okay, DTA?
Let's hear it.
All right. Before we move to the consent agenda, then, do you want to read the donations, Ms. Sam?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Merced Union High School District wishes to thank the following for their donations. At Atwater High School, the Ebony Socialites of Atwater, the Central California Conference, the Merced River Ag Boosters Association, Gilda Gonzalez and Kenneth Wasaki, Gloria Gonzalez, and Steve Barr Memorial. The Merced Golden Lions donated to El Capitan High School, and they also donated to Golden Valley High School along with Doug Fletch and the Merced River Ag Boosters Association. Merced River Ag Boosters also donated to Livingston High School along with Kamal Deep Judy, I apologize if I mispronounced that. And at Merced High School, donations were made by also the Merced Golden Lions, Cindy Ramirez, the Merced High School Athletic Foundation, the Merced High School Class of 1976, the Merced Women's Club, Merced River Ag, Denise Bailey, and Nancy Goodban. And I just wanted to say, I just learned this, but the Merced High Class of 1976 invites all of the graduates in their class to make a $76 donation every year, and then they put that towards a scholarship. I thought that was really cool. If anybody else
That is cool.
knows, is part of a class that maybe wanted to set up a scholarship for our students, and
Separate class of 2000.
yeah, I don't know, yeah, but anyway, I just thought that was a really neat thing that the class of 76, and they just started doing it recently. That's not something they've done forever, but I thought that was a neat concept, so. Thank you, class of 76.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second by Mrs. Ham? Oh,
whatever.
okay. Okay, we'll call for the vote then, please.
Ralph, did you learn about the portable?
Yeah.
Motion carries 4-0.
President Pickles, since you just approved the consent agenda and the new principal of El Capitan High School, Megan Coe, I'd like to introduce and congratulate her. Megan has served our district as a psychologist, an AP in multiple positions, all at Golden Valley. We had the interviews today. She did outstanding, as she has in other interviews. She's been a finalist for a few different positions. And then we had the final interviews this afternoon. So very happy to have you aboard, Megan.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can come up to the podium and give your speech now. Yeah, all new principals have to do that.
I'll get your sandpaper out and start getting this stuff on for sure.
All right, we have, one action item, and that is the notice of election. Dr. Weimer.
4 trustee areas are up for election in November 22. These areas are trustee area number 1 for a 4-year term, which is Ms. Ham. Trustee number 2 for a 4-year term, Ms. Pickle. Trustee 4 for a 2-year term, Ms. Jackina, sorry. And trustee 5, Mr. Lopez, for a 4-year term. In order for these seats to be included on the ballot, state law requires notice of election and appropriate resolutions to be approved by the board. These resolutions set forth the authority for ordering the election and occur prior to each election. So basically, you have the notice of election, which is the positions and the terms that were just read, the ordering of the election for that, and then the last piece is what happens in case of a tie, and we draw straws. historically what we do, so that's not something new.
Really crazy.
Yeah.
Is that something we can amend? Seems like maybe if it's tie, they come in and interview with the board, just like when we have an open position. I don't know, drawing cards. Really.
The funny thing is, we've seen this happen actually in the state of California
Yeah.
about 3 times in the last 2 years, where places have come down to that close and they've actually done conflict.
Paper, rock, scissors.
Another option.
The superintendent recommends the board authorize the signing of the notice of election, adopt resolution number 1721, order of election, and resolution 19-21, selection in case.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. And I'll call for the vote then, please. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. All right, Superintendent's report, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, President Pickle. First, I just want to say to the people left in this room, it has been an incredibly difficult 2 years on everybody, in all aspects of life, and not just here, of course, across the district. But I don't say this enough, and I just want to thank all of you for everything you do to keep everything flowing and moving forward and keeping your head up, even when it's getting pounded some days. Just keeping things in order and progressing. And that's been hard for districts the last 2 years. And I think I've said this before, that relative to others, we have performed very well. So this is a particularly difficult time of the year, board members, for cabinet. May and June, we are running around with our heads cut off. We have a 7 o'clock meeting tomorrow morning to iron some things out. They were all running crazy today and will be all week. So thank you. Our Employee of the Year awards were distributed. I went around and gave Joel Sebastian our Administrator of the Year award, and Kyle Clinton, math teacher at El Capitan, our Certificated Employee of the Year, and Mandy Nates, our Classified Employee of the Year, and Mandy serves at Livingston High School. Always a joy. Graduations were all outstanding. All sites did a great job. We graduated a grand total of 2,418 students. You have heard about our new hire, Director of Communications, Viviana Fuentes and Ms. Cope tonight. Summer school happenings started on Monday at the site and will run through the first week of July. Staff development, the Summer Institute is back, and that will be held at UHAC Colony. The first session is June 13th through the 16th. Second session is August 1st and 2nd, and there is a classified, for the first time, an exclusive classified session. So proud of that. You heard about the summer internship at the DO. That's outstanding. And just want to say good luck to all of our Merced County Fair goers who are working hard this week. And also congratulations to the Golden Valley Skills USA team, which was recognized by the Merced City Council for various awards. Next week, we will have 2 action items, the LCAP and the budget. And in addition, we will have a report on campus security, unless the board has anything else for us to add.
Board communications, Mr. Jayasinga?
It was a busy few weeks, and I thoroughly enjoyed my first, attendance at the graduation ceremony. Also, senior exit interviews were very enlightening. I enjoyed that, as well as the military commissioning at Merced High School. So, thank you for everything that, the teachers, staff, administrators, and then the district office does for our students. With that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Lopez?
Yeah, attended the Independence High School graduation. I missed the following two after that. The Colony's high school graduation was fantastic. Jane Euchre and her team did a fantastic job there. I do appreciate all of the 5 trustees, making the best efforts to attend as many, school-wide events. I think it's fantastic that we're out there as much as possible and getting back out there like we should be and, being engaged and involved. That's true, the wonderful things that our district continues to do. So I greatly appreciate that. And I want to thank all the staff tonight for your reports. I think when it comes to us asking less and less questions, is because you guys are being more, proactive and thorough in the reports that you guys are presenting us, and it leaves minimal, room for questions because you're answering for it ahead of time. So I do appreciate all that. And I think it's fantastic. I personally look forward to the MTSS work on next steps, because I think that's what every school should be doing. As far as getting to know their kids the first 6 weeks of school and, and meeting their needs as soon as possible versus later on down the road, then they become ours, and then we've got a bigger dilemma to deal with. So I look forward to that work, and, if there's anything else that we can do to support that, let's do it. Let the LCAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Mrs. Ham?
Lots of great comments by both of you, and I had the privilege of being at Merced High's first ever graduation in the Kathy Hostetler Stadium. It was amazing. It really is such a beautiful venue, and it was, it just was very well executed by the site as well. Viviana, congratulations, very excited, and I love that you've already put your own personal stamp on the job right out of the gates with this internship. That's very exciting for our community, so thank you. I would love to hear what we are doing to engage parents of incoming freshmen, what that communication is like, how do parents know to set up Parent Square and Aries and whatever, get all of the information, because I don't know where that typically falls, but I remember the first freshman that I had, I didn't learn any of that till she was a sophomore, and it was an accident. So I just think that's an opportunity right away for us to engage parents, right, with better communication. And I know the district, that was many years ago, so we've gotten a lot better since then. But yeah, really excited to see all of the activities that are going on campuses right now, even though school just got out, right? They're very, very, very busy, and exciting that we offer these great summer opportunities for our kids. So thanks again to everyone for, we got through this year, and we've got the summer, and we're going to be back better than ever with all of these wonderful programs that are being executed.
Thank you. I had the privilege of attending Independence, Yosemite, and Merced Adult School graduations, all 3 of those, and they were all fantastic. They all had their own personal little stamp on them, and they were Patricia Johnson were a couple of those, but very enjoyable. It was just a pleasure to be able to share that with the students and the staff and the families. And then my comprehensive site was Atwater High, just a fantastic graduation. I think all of us have said these are the best ceremonies we've been to. And it was just absolutely amazing. So very, very pleased with that. And congratulations to the staff and students at all the sites for their impressive graduation ceremonies. Exit interviews at Buhat Colony, I attended. Those are fantastic as well. Just absolutely you know, perfect, setup, culinary arts students brought in the food, everyone just, amazing job, very, well done, well executed. So thank you to, Mrs. Euchre and her staff for that. And I just appreciate, like Mr. Lopez was saying, the presentation, just the strategic, thorough, systemic, you know, approach that the district is taking to addressing some of those needs is very much appreciated. And then as we close out, I know we have next week, but as we close out the regular meetings for the regular year, just want to thank each one of the trustees for your time and your service, and thank you to the staff as well. So with that, we can adjourn at 8:14. Thank you.
Thank you.